Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of To The Point podcast. Everybody's doing well on this beautiful Tuesday here as we head into the month of August. I didn't mention that yesterday, but already August 3rd, we got through the New Brunswick long weekend. So we're in the home stretch of summer, which is depressing. But you get a nice day like today, makes you feel a little bit better. Think, okay, let's get a good August because the weather hasn't been great. Let's just be honest here. This summer, the weather has been pretty underwhelming. After some really great weather last summer, maybe we get a little greedy, and we've gotten a lot of garbage so far. So I'm hoping for a better August. We can get some nicer weather, really enjoy it, because it's been hit or miss so far this summer, and been a lot more miss than hit, that's for sure. Little update on the podcast. The roundtable that was supposed to be this Friday will be pushed back to a week from Friday. So we are going to do it. It's going to be a week from Friday. Some scheduling issues, a couple of golf tournaments. So I'm going to let my guest, Rankin Campbell, who has not been on the podcast yet, but he runs Campbell's Cognitive Therapy in Miramichi. He's a psychologist and a really smart dude, but he also knows a lot about hockey. So we're going to go into that. And I'll also be joined by Cole McDonald, another good friend of mine who they live together. We live very in close proximity for a number of years during my university days. And I've talked a lot of sports with the both of them. And I'm looking forward to having them on to chat about the Atlantic Division, talk about free agency. This weekend, I'm going to be doing a show myself about the Metropolitan Division when it comes to signings, what teams didn't do, how their rosters look. So I'm going to start it off with the Metro this weekend. We'll do the Atlantic a week from Friday, and we'll go from there. Throughout this, I'm also be doing some NFL podcasts, looking at divisions, looking at teams, how they stack up. I'm looking forward to it. The NFL, to me, is the mecca. It's the best sport in the world. I love hockey. Don't get me wrong. And, it's the pride of Canada to play hockey, but there's nothing like the NFL. It's just, it starts Thursday night in a preseason game, and Thursday is going to be a crazy night for sports. I don't know how I'm going to fit it all in. You got the CFL opener, first game in 20 months, Blue Bombers, Tiger Cats rematch of the Grey Cup in 2019. Then you have the Hall of Fame game where, yes, no starters will be playing in this NFL preseason game, but I want to watch it. I want to see if Dwayne Haskins gets some snaps in week one, what Mason Rudolph looks like, see the different backs. Do they dress Najee Harris, the Pittsburgh Steelers first round pick running back out of Alabama? So there's still intrigue to me, this just NFL, on the field. And also Thursday night, I had to try to figure this one out. I said this yesterday in the podcast, but I tried to figure out where time change and when this game's actually going down. It's the Canadian women's soccer going for gold against Team Sweden. That's 11 o'clock Thursday night. So that's a tough start for me because I'm not a guy who gets a lot of sleep. Don't really enjoy sleeping that much. I know that's an oxymoron there, but I'll be watching. This is huge. If we're down a couple goals by halftime, I'm going the hell to bed. But if it's close and we're in it and we have a chance to win a gold medal, I feel like it's my patriotic duty to stay up and watch these women cap it off. These Tokyo Olympics for Canada, if we're just looking at our, as a country, the biggest headline, and it's not even close, the next headline, it's women. Women dominating opposed to men. And does that surprise me? No, because I grew up in a household where my sister has more athleticism than I could even dream of having. She's a better athlete than me. She's smarter than me. She's a better person than me. So women, for too long, women have been pushed back. We think of gender. We think of, gender is what we're talking about. We think of race. We think of sexual orientation. That's been a huge issue, but something that's still exists and it's getting better. But just, women in life and in sports taking a more visible, getting more available front and center. And yeah, I mean, the name Christine Sinclair rings through for Canadians. But this women's soccer team, our program, has been at the top, in the top 5 in the world for years. But yet the bigger story is how bad our men's program is. Who cares? Our women are winning. They're involved in tournaments. At least they're battling. That's something that we can all be excited about. That's something as a country, not only we should be promoting it more. And not just soccer, but we have one medal by a man in this entire Olympics, Andre DeGrasse, and it's bronze. Personal best for himself. Good run, Andre. Bad qualifying race, but we won't get into that. But Penny Oleksiak, the Canadian women's soccer team, the rowing team that won a gold medal. Women. It's not, and I truly feel this way. A lot of people are uncomfortable that women are doing better than men at these Olympics. And when I mean some people, I mean men. And I don't know why. I still feel it's an issue. People get uncomfortable that women are doing superior to men. And our Canadian women's hockey team has been as good as any team that we've dressed. I'm talking about men. It's very hard to quantify, but it's just about learning. And I'm not going to be hypocritical here. In the past few years, I've watched more women's hockey than I have my entire life. When my sister pivoted from, quote unquote, men's hockey or boys hockey at the time, she's playing peewee, to girls hockey, or, when they were younger, to now women's hockey, where she's playing, going to be playing at UNB, I struggled with it. It's not the same game. I didn't get as invested. I watched my sister a ton growing up when she played, quote unquote, boys hockey. And I should have watched her more when she played women's when she was younger. And that's on me. Again, you don't have to love everything, but it's still hockey. It's still competition. I love hockey more than almost anything in the world. Why wouldn't I love something that my sister, again, who I love almost more than anybody in the world, is doing? And I just think it's about growth. And for a lot of men, accepting women as just equal, but in this case, in these last 2 weeks, superior to your own gender, can be very difficult and also really scary. And it shouldn't be that way. It should just be celebrated and known for a fact that women kick ass. Like, men don't give birth. Like, we don't know pain. We don't know suffering. And I didn't think I was going to go this way to start the podcast, but it's just, I like to think big picture. I like to do, in the last couple months, I do some soul searching. I think about big topics. And, I talked about kneeling on this podcast. I've talked about how, Colin Kaepernick was seen as divisive. Be it Tim Tebow, who took a knee after every touchdown because he needed to pray to Jesus, was not seen as divisive at all. He was, promoted for being an Anglican Christian. Well, what's the difference? And what's the difference between a woman succeeding and a man succeeding? Absolutely nothing. This narrative needs to end. I don't think it's even a media issue. It's somewhat of a media issue, but it's, it starts off by saying, I heard it this morning on CBC watching the gymnastics, which was just incredible. I don't know how those women do that. I'll talk about Simone and the crazy ending to the gymnastics balance beam final this morning. But why does it start off the coverage with, the men have only won one medal? I thought this was about a country. It's about what have we done as a whole? And if that means that women win every damn medal, great. As long as they're gold. But I just think this is an issue that is still existing. It's still a problem, like using the N-word, like being derogatory towards gay people. Women being oppressed, women being put down, women being put on a different scale than male athletes is still an issue. And as a society, as people, and just for myself as a human being, I really hope that a part of my life, whether it's 5, 10 years, we can get to a position where that's not a story, where, women like my sister can go play hockey and make a good living. There's a WNBA model where female hockey players, female soccer players can make a real living doing what they love. It's not part-time work. And hopefully one day it's just women kick ass at the Summer and Winter Olympics, and they're as good or better in most cases than male athletes. And in Tokyo, it's not a debate. It's not conjecture. It's just a damn fact. And congrats to every woman that's medaled so far. Talking about women, I mentioned the gymnastics balance beam final this morning, which I don't know how the hell they do that. I'll be honest. This was the first time I've ever watched gymnastics in my life this morning. I enjoyed it. There's a lot of stuff I don't watch, when it comes to the Olympics. I think some of these sports are not sports. That could be an unpopular opinion, but like break dancing, that's not a sport. I'm sorry. Break dancing is not a sport. I don't believe 3-on-3 basketball is a sport. There's a lot of the swimming crap. I think there's too many. There's obscure things like water polo. That's a sport. You want to watch something where guys are trying to kill each other? Water polo, that shit gets real in the pool. And I enjoy water polo. But the gymnast, what they do and contort their body, it was incredible this morning for me to watch. But the main headline was Canadian Simone Biles competing. She had bowed out of her last 4 events, but she decided that today she was going to compete in the balance beam. And for most of the morning, it looked like she was going to pick up a silver medal. Young Changji was from China, had the gold wrapped up. They had gone through all the rest. Simone looked like she was going to win silver. When Gwen Chen is this young lady's last name, she was the last gymnast to compete. And what an incredible job she did. She did so well. She won the gold medal, beating out her countrywoman and knocking Simone Biles down to a bronze medal. And great moment for that country where you have somebody medaled winning gold and silver. Clearly was a big deal for them. And they both had really high scores. So again, my thoughts on medals. There's only one that really counts, but a good moment for China where they're already dominating the medal count to begin with. So, hurrah for them. But Simone, this is a positive yet apprehensive victory for me. So she wins a medal where, most people think winning a bronze medal is great. So I'm going to go with conventional wisdom right now. It's great. And she's won more golds than anybody can think of. She's the best of all time in the sport. Again, I don't watch a lot of gymnastics, but looking at her resume, it's damn impressive. And, I think she's pretty too. So that props her up a little bit in my book. But again, with this whole talking about mental health, and it's definitely something that is going to stick with her. And I'm wondering if Simone will go down the path of Michael Phelps. Now, as I'm sure most of you know, Michael Phelps is the most decorated Olympian in the history of the Olympics. He dominated the pool like no other. He's, when it comes to swimming, there's no other bigger name than Michael Phelps. And since retiring, what he's done is he's started public speaking. He's talking about mental health. That's really become one of his key. That's how he's making a living now. He talks to schools. He talks to groups about mental health, about, overcoming difficult things. And I think I want to see what Simone does with this, because on the surface, it's not great optics that she competed a week after saying she was dealing with mental health issues, because I think it makes mental health look, it was bad today, but tomorrow I'm fine and I'm good to go. I don't think you can heal yourself in a week. You can't heal a broken leg in a week. And, your head is much more hard to control than a broken leg. So I think over time, this story can have a really positive ending / she's only 24 years old. I doubt she'll be back at the Olympics, especially after a really traumatic experience this time. But what does she do? In 3 years at the next Summer Olympics, is she a commentator? Is she public speaking? Is she doing different things? I think that's a really important aspect of what's going on here. What does Simone do with mental health? Maybe she's not a public speaker. Maybe she's afraid to do that. But does she start an organization, a foundation, or something to help other gymnasts, other professional athletes get in a better headspace to be more mentally prepped for all the pressure that they will face at the Olympics, at a Super Bowl, a big game, what have you? Maybe it's towards the youth who have more pressure than ever by parents and coaches to be invested in that sport by age 4. By age, this is really no joke. Nowadays, if you're not playing the sport that parents are telling you, yeah, we're going to do summer hockey, we're going to do this, age 6, and you have to be committed to it. And that's wrong. I don't think, again, I'm not a parent. I hope I'm never a parent. But I think that's a wrong way to parent your kid, because 6 years old, nobody knows what the hell they want to do, but you put kids in certain directions. I think being a kid, finding out what you like, and in Simone's case, to talk to people, how do you handle that pressure? What can you do to alleviate that in the moment? Maybe she can learn those things going through this process and help the next generation of gymnasts or other sports overcome fears that she couldn't in this moment. And I think that would be a great bookend to this story. And we'll see. Again, I don't think it's a great look that she competed today. I'll just be honest. It's cool that she wins a medal, but I don't think the mental health image and how really important, how severe it can be on somebody, and the trauma it can lead to, I don't think it was represented fairly by Simone over these past 2 weeks. I think you compete or you don't. Like I said, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I was taught by my parents and coaches, when you're injured, you lay on the ice and you're really injured. You need help off. If you block a shot and you're hurting, you get your ass up and get to the bench. And this is a different thing. It's in your head. But if you're before the game and you say, I just can't do this. I literally can't. Well, then you don't, because you'd hurt your team, or you could potentially hurt yourself, what have you. And I think she should have made that decision. and it's her decision. But I think she'll be celebrated in the United States by some. And I do think others, I don't think you can criticize her because you don't want to, she's dealing with mental health issues, but you can look and give a different opinion without being too harsh. That's something I don't think a lot of people do too. It's just understand where she's coming from, understand where anybody's coming from in just a conversation, understand their point of view, and then see if you can pivot or come up with a different idea or something along those lines. And for Simone, I think a lot of Americans will say, we still love Simone Biles. She's, a huge part of this country. She's one of our best athletes, period, any sport. However, what happened? Why couldn't you compete on July 26th, but on August 3rd, you could? And I think that's legitimate. I think it's a real question that she probably won't have to answer because she's going to be exiting the Olympics, leaving Tokyo, tonight or tomorrow. But I do think it'll be in the back of people's minds for a period of time here. This morning, Andre DeGrasse and Aaron Brown, two of our track and field athletes, both qualified for the 200-meter final. That'll be tomorrow morning. So they'll both be in the final heat racing for gold. DeGrasse set a personal best record. So unlike his 100-meter qualifier, he is going to be in a good position and in a great spot to hopefully win a gold medal. It would be obviously the 100-meter is the headliner. It's where you see the fastest man in the world, but he can redeem himself in a sense. Obviously, a lot of people love the bronze, and he did run his personal best, which I'm not going to kill him for. But winning the 200-meter and then setting a personal best in the bronze, that's a pretty damn good Olympics. And I think that, again, I talk about bookends with Simone. That would bookend Andre DeGrasse really, really well. Aaron Brown is in there as well. He's not going to have as great of lane as DeGrasse, but he did not even qualify for the 200-meter final in Rio. So he's in new territory for him. So 2 Canadians out of the 9, good odds. Hopefully we can see both of them medal. But really this race is about Andre DeGrasse. Can you win this? He lost to Usain in Rio. That's understandable. The fastest man in the world for a long period of time. But can you step up? Can you win another? Can you win this race after coming up short in the 100-meter final? Team USA basketball, they advanced to the semifinal with a win over Spain. Not really impressive. They were trailing by 3 at the half. They ultimately win by 14, but they'll go on to play Australia. And led by Kevin Durant, Chris Middleton, Devin Booker over there playing as well. They have a strong team, but you look on the other side, and just an unlikely story. It's Slovenia, led by Dallas Mavericks superstar Luka Doncic, who has not lost playing internationally. He's in his whole career prior to the NBA, he's not lost representing Slovenia, and getting to Olympic qualifying, getting to the Olympics, it was a huge deal. Now they're in the semifinal, and Slovenia, a very small country, is guaranteed to play for a medal in basketball. I recall in Sochi when just Slovenia qualified, led by Anže Kopitar. His dad was on the bench. It was a big moment for that country. If they could potentially medal, where they're going to play France, a tough opponent. They beat the Americans in the first game of the tournament. But even if you lose, you can play for bronze and medal, as it's such a tiny country where, again, this will only help Luka Doncic's rep around the league. He's after the Olympics, he will likely sign a huge max extension with the Dallas Mavericks after his rookie deal is expiring. So we'll see what happens there, but that'll be interesting to watch over the next couple of days. We got 200-meter final, like I said, women's soccer. So the Olympics are winding down, but there are some events before we all shut it down. The Canadian men's volleyball team was eliminated from competition last night, losing to Russia. So they're eliminated, losing 3 straight, really tight sets, but Russians overcame them. They're into the semifinal. So we're wrapping up water polo. We have some water polo, field hockey, still got soccer, basketball to play out, women's golf. But we are winding down on the Tokyo Olympics, and we have a few days left to see if some athletes can bring home some medals for this great country. Yesterday was August 3rd, and it marked the opening of NBA free agency. And August 6th is technically the first day that free agents can sign deals with new teams. But there's a 5-day talking period, and every deal will be set by the time we hit Friday. And it started off fast and furious. And really the big headliner of the day was Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry, the longtime Toronto Raptor. Most people view him as the greatest Raptor of all time. He decided to depart the organization after 9 years, after winning a title with Kawhi Leonard, going through tough times, almost being traded to the Knicks, that falling through, Demar DeRozan being traded without his knowledge. But he leaves, one of the greatest Raptors of all time. And he is headed to South Beach. He will be joining the Miami Heat, where Miami was in the NBA Finals 2 years ago. This past year, they make the playoffs. They get swept by the Milwaukee Bucks. And clearly, Pat Riley was not comfortable with that. He saw Kyle Lowry at 35 years old and said he's still got something left in the tank because he's signing him to a 3-year contract. How it's going to work is the Heat and Raptors are going to have a sign and trade. So Lowry will sign technically with the Raptors, and they will flip him to the Heat, where the Heat need to move out money for Lowry to sign there. So likely Goran Dragic will be involved in the deal. They picked up his $14.9 million option. I don't know if the Raptors will want to take him on because they got Malachi Flynn, Fred VanVleet, Scotty Barnes on the roster. So there may be a third team involved, a 3-way trade. But Lowry will be in Miami come, Friday or a little bit later. The Raptors will get some compensation for the sign and trade. And again, it's an end of an era. Kawhi Leonard was only here a year, but he won a championship. Kyle Lowry was here for 9. He went through tough battles. He fought LeBron James in the playoffs, losing once in the conference final, second round, getting swept, getting his shot blocked by Paul Pierce, playing the Washington Wizards in the postseason. It never looked like this Raptors team was going to overcome and even get to an NBA Finals. But a guy like Lowry persevered. He took charges. He played tough defense. He made big threes, and he was the heart and soul of this team. And I think he'll have a statue outside of Scotiabank Arena when his career's over. But clearly he still has some dog in him. He still has that desire to win. And he's going down to a team in Miami. It's coming off such a disappointing playoffs, but they do have a lot of great things in place. They got Jimmy Butler, who is, again, Jimmy Butler is not a three-point shooter, but we've seen, Giannis is not a great three-point shooter, and they won an NBA championship, really Milwaukee dominating in the inside. PJ Tucker is a good three-point shooter, but they had guys drive the paint, score in the mid-range, and it worked. But Butler's just an all-around, he's a great leader. He is on teams where guys get sick of him because he dogs in them. But Lowry is that type of competitor. I think these two will spark and fuel one another, quite honestly, where Butler will come at Lowry. Lowry will come at him, and they will just be like two bulls, bucking into each other, hoping to see which one will break first. And these two are very strong-willed individuals, and I think we'll see them, really help each other, propel each other to new heights. So that's promising. But Butler is an all-star player, like I said, and he's really the heart and soul of this team. They also got center Bam Adebayo, who is a guy that can do it all. He does have an outside shot, but his inside game is strong. He's a strong defender. And he's an undersized 5, but he works hard in the defensive end. He blocks shots. He hustles up and down the floor. He's a great, when you want to say you want to push the floor for a big man, Bam can do that for you. He's not a Dwight Howard. He's not a Andre Drummond, who are big men that kind of slow the pace down. He can make, a 15 to 17 foot shot. It's not just, in the paint for Bam. And he's so talented. He's locked up in Miami long-term. And he had an okay season last year, dealt with some injuries, but the team just didn't feel right. They had COVID problems from early on in the year, and it really set them behind the 8 ball. So that hurt them. And then they re-signed Duncan Robinson. He's one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA. This guy will never take a 2-point shot unless it's a layup. but he shoots over 40% every year from three. He's a dangerous three-point shooter. And, with this contract, he gets 5 years, $90 million. He gets the highest contract in NBA history for an undrafted player. Robinson's a white guard, definitely a shooting guard, not a great defensive player, doesn't really put a whole lot of effort into that side of the ball. But again, the guy can shoot the lights out, and he gets $90 million to stay in Miami. They still have Tyler Hero, who had a setback last year in his sophomore season. We saw him, remember, in the bubble. The guy was coming off the bench being, adding to his name, being a hero for the Miami Heat. But he's still there. So adding Lowry, they got rid of Andre Iguodala. So they got a team. It looks strong that they got a good team on paper. And it's reported that they want to add Demar DeRozan. And if you remember, Demar DeRozan played in Toronto with Lowry for a long time. They had success. They got to a conference final. DeRozan made multiple All-Star teams, but they never got over the hump. And I don't love that. I don't think they should look into that, even if Lowry wants him. Okay, well, Lowry's 35 years old. He's not, he shouldn't be the heartbeat of this team. Jimmy Butler is, and they already have a mid-range game that's better. Butler's way better defensively, and I just think he's better assisting the ball than DeRozan. Let DeRozan figure out a new landing spot. But they also added PJ Tucker from Milwaukee, just fresh off winning an NBA title. So PJ Tucker signs for 2 years, $15 million. He'll space the floor, make those corner threes that he's so famous for. But I look at the Heat roster and say, yeah, they make good additions. And Lowry's a good player, but he's 35. They're re-signing Jimmy Butler, Duncan Robinson, but they have a lot of the same pieces. And I still think with this move, they're behind Milwaukee and they're behind the Brooklyn Nets. Milwaukee didn't make any major moves yesterday. They re-signed Bobby Portis, who was a big piece off the bench, but they still have Giannis. They still have Drew Holiday. They still have Chris Middleton. And re-signing Portis, they have Pat Connaughton off the bench. They should get DiVincenzo back, who hurt himself in the playoffs, so he should be available to the team. But they still have that nucleus, and Giannis is coming off winning the Finals MVP. The team gelled well together. They lose PJ Tucker, obviously, but they still have that winning mentality. And then there's Brooklyn. Last year, really, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving were never healthy at the same time. The first round of the playoffs they were, but then you had Kyrie Irving get hurt in game 3 of the second round. Harden was hurt in game 1, and they never got on the floor together. And it doesn't guarantee that Brooklyn's going to be successful because injuries happen and these guys are injury prone. Kevin Durant tore his Achilles. Kyrie Irving seems to always have something wrong with him. And that's sports. We can say right now that the Nets and the Lakers are the favorite to get to the NBA Finals, but they were last year as well, and neither of them got to a conference final. So there's still a lot in the air Miami could add, but as I look right now, I think they've gotten better, hands down. I do think Dragic is a really good player, though. Losing him, Lowry, Dragic, they're similar. I think Dragic is a better offensive player at this point, but clearly I think Lowry, with his floor, being a floor general, being a guy that can distribute the basketball, he can be more of an asset. But just on paper, I do think that they are behind Milwaukee, they're behind Brooklyn, and that leaves them in kind of an uncomfortable spot here. Throughout the Eastern Conference, there were other moves. The Chicago Bulls were active. You remember at the trade deadline, they acquired Nikola Vucevic to really augment their team. They still have Zach LaVine. They got some young pieces there. And they added a point guard, a guy that can really be, I think, the floor general for this team, and that is Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball, the son of LeVar, who was originally drafted 2nd overall by the Los Angeles Lakers, is now on his 3rd NBA team. But Lonzo has gotten better year over year. In his rookie season, the guy could not shoot. He shot from up here. It looked like he was grabbing something off the top shelf, as Keegan Thompson joked on Saturday Night Live. And he's improved. In his rookie year, he was a 52% free throw shooter. He's now up to 77%. He's working on his game. He shot close to 40% from 3 last year. Is he a great shooter? No, but he keeps improving. He's got that work ethic to get better. And, is he going to be a superstar? No. Magic Johnson said his number would be raised in at Staples Center one day, and that won't be happening. But I think the Bulls look at it and say, we've been so irrelevant for so long. We got Vucevic. We got Zach LaVine, who's a star. Lonzo can be a floor general. We got ourselves a decent team here, especially in the East. We can make a push for the playoffs. Orlando's terrible. Teams keep getting worse on paper. And playoff teams at the bottom of the standings, does Charlotte, are they as good as we think they are? Can Atlanta, keep doing what they did this year, getting to a conference final? So you want to take your chances. And the Bulls also added Alex Caruso. He was from the Lakers. He's a guy that he's going to have energy. He'll come off the bench and give you everything he's got. But he's a guy that I think the Lakers will miss. LeBron seemed to like playing with him. He played high tempo. And he's a guy that when Lonzo needs a breather, you can put Caruso on the floor. He's not as good of a facilitator, but he can score the basketball and he can be creative and create his own shots. That's something that he brings to the table. Also in the East, the Knicks really just stay with what they had. They re-signed Nerlens Noel. They re-signed Derrick Rose. They didn't do anything crazy, but they're signing guys to long-term extensions. They had their best year in a long time last year under Tom Thibodeau, losing to Atlanta in 5 games in the first round, but being the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference was a big deal. And I think they want to continue that. They still have Julius Randle, who they need to sign. I don't think they should give him a supermax or anything like that. I don't think he can be the best player on a championship team, but he can be a really good number 2. And they'll have to decide there's really nobody available that's going to change your team unless you're talking about Kawhi Leonard. But Kawhi Leonard is unlikely to play next year. He had ACL surgery. The guy is as timid as anybody in pro sports. He takes his time like no other. He will wait. He's going to come back when he's 200% healthy and give himself that extra time to know he's healthy. And I have my doubts that he plays next year. But I give the Knicks credit for bringing a lot of those guys back. Derrick Rose, in particular, who played fantastic for them down the stretch last year. Nerlens Noel, who's been bouncing around, gets a long-term extension. He's worked hard to improve his game and earn a roster spot. A lot of guys would just, fade away. But he had that perseverance and he wasn't going to take that. So credit to him for earning it. But the East still looks a lot, the same. The Atlanta Hawks re-signed Trae Young to a max extension. That makes a lot of sense. He had a great playoff, but they got a similar team. They lose Solomon Hill. He was on their bench. Their big question is John Collins going to return? He's a restricted free agent. It's reported that teams will be looking to sign him to an offer sheet that Atlanta would have to match. He didn't have a great end to the postseason, but he's a guy I'm sure they want to keep around, be part of their nucleus moving forward. And, with Trae Young signed, you keep John Collins, you got Bogdanovich, you got some good shooters on this team. You just made a conference final, shocking the world. But can Atlanta build off that? Can they be, they made the 5th seed last year. I think they can make a push for that again. Obviously, is Philly as good next year? Is Ben Simmons going to be on that roster? It's been reported forever that he's available on the trade market. He's still a 76er, but that relationship is basically dead. They've lost Dwight Howard in free agency. They added Andre Drummond in his place. But what do they really have? They got Kork Moss, who they re-signed. But they don't have a team that's, just says we're going to go win the NBA championship. Seth Curry is important to that team for sure. But without Ben Simmons, depending on the return you get, it really leaves a hole in that lineup. And it leaves Embiid as a solo star, which is a bunch of good cast-offs, so to speak. Milwaukee had Giannis, who's a superstar, but at least Middleton and Holiday have been all-stars before. You look around that lineup, if Simmons is gone, right now there's no other real all-star. Seth Curry is a great 3-point shooter, but he's not going to make an all-star team. Andre Drummond has made an all-star team, but again, he's been on really bad teams making that all-star team as their center. So we'll see, but I think the East is open. And just because the Nets are the favorite does not mean that the Nets are going to be there at the end of the year. Health is so important. Luck, seeding. We should have a regular just a regular season next year where it's playing 82 and home court with full crowds can be a huge factor. It can be a massive momentum builder. And, I think it really helped Milwaukee down the stretch and was a big reason why they ultimately won the NBA championship. Out in the Western Conference, the Lakers made their big move early. They re-signed. They traded for Russell Westbrook, flipping Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and a first-round pick. So they really had to add to the fringe of the roster. They brought back Dwight Howard. He was their backup center the season they won the NBA championship. He was really the guy who grabbed rebounds, was the muscle of that team. And it was his turnaround year. He had a great season last year in Philly, but he decides to come back to the Lakers where he had the ultimate success. And, LeBron seems to really like Dwight. Dwight plays hard every time he's on the floor. His limitations, but whenever he's out there for 10 to 14 minutes, he's going to give you everything he has. They added Kent Bazemore for Golden State. This guy is a streaky scorer. He can shoot from three. He's got a good mid-range game. And normally for Kent, it's either he's going to give you 15 points off the bench or he's going to give you none and shoot 0 for 8. There's a reason why he's not a starter. And, he was drafted to be a starter, but it just never translated for him. He had all the tools, had all the, intangibles, so to speak, but it just never came together. But the Lakers got to hope that more often than not, he's hitting and that he can be a dangerous weapon off the bench for a team that just needs, low dollar contracts to hit and be effective off the bench because they really don't have money to spend anywhere else. They also added Wayne Ellington from Detroit. He's a guy that can be a three-point shooter. This team needed three-point shooting. He reminds me a bit of Kyle Korver, which LeBron loved Kyle in Cleveland, helped him win a championship. Again, a guy that was not going to assist the ball, not going to rebound, likely not going to get a steal, but he ran the floor hard. He would get to corners and knock down threes. Ellington is a little bit more versatile, but he has a similar game to Korver, and I can see why LeBron wanted him added. And then moments before going live on this podcast, it was reported that Carmelo Anthony, the former Denver Nugget, the former New York Knick, great player, former NCAA champion at Syracuse, is joining the Los Angeles Lakers on a 1-year contract. And LeBron and Carmelo are really, really close friends. Their families are close. They're really both really close with Chris Paul. They have a close bond. And this doesn't surprise me. Carmelo going to the Lakers makes perfect sense. He's been in Portland for a number of years, had great success being a bench player. He's a mid-range jump shooter, but he's also improved his three-point shot. But the Lakers needed a cheap option. They needed a score, and Melo provides both of those things. His defense is still not great, but last year he didn't have a dip. Since pivoting to his bench role, he's accepted that. He has not asked for more minutes. He's just been a good cog, a good teammate. And I think that he will do the same for the Lakers. He will play limited minutes, but he's going to be with LeBron. I think this is a good ad for the Lakers. Their team, again, does not have a whole lot of three-point shooting. But listening to an analyst yesterday, which I think was fair, Milwaukee was not a great three-point shooting team either. And they won the NBA championship. So it doesn't have to be a barrage of three-point shots. It's just about different styles, how you defend it, and ultimately how you come out on the other side. And for the Lakers, it's a wait-and-see approach. You got a lot of big personalities. Dwight's a big personality. Melo is a guy that can have a big personality. LeBron, even though people can downplay it, he's a guy that likes to be the center of attention, likes to be in control. And I think adding a guy like Melo shows that he has a lot of say in what the Lakers are doing when it comes to free agency. But, he's got his boy Russ, who, again, another big personality, but can these guys coexist? That's the big question. Can all these personalities coexist and be a team, not just a group of individuals that score and, nights you'll win? I think you look at Team USA in the Olympics for the men's side, they're a group of individuals. They're not a team. Slovenia, Australia, France, these are team. There's no superstar that overcomes all the, even Luka Doncic does not, he is on Slovenia. He's part of the team where you got Kevin Durant. You got, like I said, you got a lot of Devin Booker. It's just about guys really showcasing themselves and less about less about themselves and more about what can we do as a team? What can we do as a nation to win this thing? And the Lakers are doing some things to get better. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the young Canadian, signed a max extension with Oklahoma City. They're a team that's clearly moving for the future. They got a lot of picks in the next couple drafts, and Gilgeous-Alexander is a guy that plays point guard, really is the future of that team. I don't know if he'll be there for the whole 5 years, $172 million of that contract, but they have 22 picks, I believe, in the next 7 years or something like that after adding picks. Sam Presti just, and it's getting ugly. It's getting ugly there, but Gilgeous-Alexander took the money. I don't blame him, and he'll be back with the team next year. The Raptors signed Gary Trent Jr., re-signing Norm Powell, who they traded to Portland, re-signs in Portland, so nothing big there. But as I'm talking, it's just being reported that DeMar DeRozan, former Toronto Raptor, former San Antonio Spur, is joining the Chicago Bulls after a sign and trade agreement with the San Antonio Spurs. So he's joining. It's going to be a 3-year contract worth more than $85 million. So a big deal for him. The Bulls are sending Thaddeus Young, a center, a future first-round pick, and 2 second-round picks to the Spurs. So a pretty good haul. Thaddeus Young, they're really dumping that money. But the picks are what the Spurs want. They are in definitely a rebuild. Tim Duncan is gone. Tony Parker is retired. Manu Ginobili is retired. The nucleus of that team, Kawhi Leonard has departed, is gone. And even Patty Mills, a guy who's been off the bench for them for a long time, is a free agent. It looks like he might be joining the Warriors and leaving San Antonio. So R.C. Buford, who's been there for a long time, is acquiring draft capital, hoping that he can get lucky like he did with David Robinson, like he did with Tim Duncan, and acquire some pillars of the future and guide that franchise back to a stable position where they're a playoff team. Greg Popovich has 1 year left in his contract. He's coaching USA at the Olympics right now. I don't think he coaches much longer in San Antonio. Maybe he leaves that organization and will coach elsewhere. But I look at San Antonio and say this was a great team. They're the Detroit Red Wings of the NBA, where they made the playoffs even longer. I think it was 25 straight years the Spurs made the playoffs. And you had Pop, and you had R.C. Buford, and those veterans, like I said, that were just pillars, and they were constantly there. But it's different now. You got Kobe White. You got Derek, I think his name's Derek White too. They a couple of Whites. You got guys that just aren't household names, and they aren't stars yet either. And they need some high draft capital. They need to acquire it, and it seems like the Bulls are going to be parting with it. And DeRozan joins a Bulls team, like I said, with Vucevic, with Zach LaVine, with Lonzo Ball now, Alex Caruso. So the Bulls are moving in a direction of trying to be a contender, at least be a playoff team. And I give them credit for that. It's been too long for them where since Derrick Rose left after he tore his Achilles and really wasn't the same player for a long time, they were irrelevant. They had, Kirk Heinrich was playing point guard for them, and they were a non-factor in a really bad Eastern Conference. They had some bad draft picks, and Wendell Carter, who didn't pan out, and Kobe White, and guys that just they drafted, they played there for a few years. Lowry Markkanen, injury-prone guys, some guys just inconsistent, and they never got any better. But they acquired Zach LaVine. That was huge. That was part of the Jimmy Butler trade, where LaVine went the other way. They need to sign him to an extension. He's one of the best players in the NBA, and you're acquiring talent around him. He hasn't had this much talent around him since, I don't think he had it in Minnesota. So getting a DeRozan, a guy that is a terrible three-point shooter. He shot 21% from three last year, but his mid-range game, he is a good passer. He's a competitor. Lonzo Ball will compete with the best of them. Vucevic is one of the best paint big men in the game. So the Bulls are trying to get better, and that's something you definitely get excited about. They are trying to put themselves in a position to be competitive, be a playoff team, and I like that they're doing that. And it's really interesting to see what they're doing. And I like that they're being aggressive. The Phoenix Suns, who lost the Milwaukee Bucks in the NBA Finals, also got their guy back. They are signing Chris Paul to a 4-year extension worth $120 million. The first 3 years, and then the fourth year is a player options. That's $30 million a season for Chris Paul. He's 36. So that contract, if he picks up the player option, will bring him to 40 years old. And guys make a lot of money in the NBA. I mean, guys make a lot of money in pro sports, but people complain about the salary cap in hockey. By the end of this contract, if Chris Paul plays the entire 4 years, he would have made over $440 million for his career just playing basketball. Just playing basketball, he will have made $440+ million. He makes $2 million a year doing State Farm commercials after making over $40 million last year just as a salary. So that just tells you how much money that these guys are raking in. Steph Curry just signed a deal with the Warriors. He's re-signing for 4 years. He will be making over $50 million a season. The NBA salaries are crazy. Alex Caruso is going to be making more money than Austin Matthews per season. And you're probably like, who the hell is Alex? Exactly. Even if you're an NBA fan, you're like, Alex Caruso makes more money than Austin Matthews? That's crazy, but it's true. And for Chris Paul, he goes back to Phoenix, where he had the most success. He gets to an NBA final, a crushing loss. But Devin Booker, I think, can only get better. He's got that Kobe Bryant in him. He's going to be motivated to come back and put on a good product. DeAndre Ayton, I think sky's the limit. He had a tough finals, but I think he can learn from that situation. You know, they need the role players to continue to get better. Hopefully, Cam Johnson, I think he's a guy that really has a ton of potential and a guy that can be a force in the NBA, not just a bench player, but can be a starter before we know it here. But NBA free agency's been wild. Phoenix stays with what they have. You got Kawhi Leonard, who's still out there. Like I said, it's unlikely he's going to play this year. But what will likely happen is the Clippers are going to sign him to a 1-year deal with a player option for the second, meaning he can opt this year to play and he'll get paid $40 million. And he could play this year, maybe come playoff time, he gets back into it. But Kawhi Leonard loves to take his time. Like I said, he's definitely a tortoise. He's a hare, not a tortoise. And he likes to take his time. And I don't think he's going to be back. But they're still going to sign him because that's the way it works. Kevin Durant got signed for $40 million a year after blowing out his Achilles, didn't play a game that season for Brooklyn. Now, they got him on a 4-year deal, but they're between a rock and a hard place here where the Clippers have no money, they have no draft picks, and they need Kawhi Leonard if they're even going to get close to winning an NBA championship. Paul George, aka Playoff P, is not good enough to do it by himself. So I think they're going to give Kawhi the money, hope that he can come back by the playoffs, and maybe they make a push. And, you know, they sign him to a long-term extension next offseason for 5 years, which he'd be eligible to get. And it's crazy to think that you'd sign a player that won't dribble a ball once for you this upcoming season. But in the NBA, getting a superstar is that valuable. If you do not have a superstar, you are not winning. You can only have one. Milwaukee had Giannis. He's the only superstar on the team, but they had one. The Dallas Mavericks had Dirk Nowitzki. That was the only superstar they had. Jason Kidd was in the back nine of his career. Sean Marion was in the back nine, but they had one. LeBron James and Kevin Durant need super teams to win NBA championships, but there are guys who can win with one superstar. They're just better players than guys like LeBron and KD. No, not really. They're not. But I believe their championships hold way more weight than going to a super team, having 3 superstars on one team and then saying, well, who's going to beat us? Kevin Durant winning in Golden State. How do you not win? You had Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are 2 of the best 3 shooters in the history of the game. Maybe you stick Reggie Miller in between them. Then you go look at LeBron. How did you not beat the Mavs in 2011? You had Chris Bosh, who was an all-star. You had Dwayne Wade, who was already a champion. But again, not everything, things happen. And sometimes a team is better than, a bunch of superstar individuals that aren't playing as a team. And I think we saw that, we see that sometime, like I said, in these two examples where you got Dirk in that scenario. You think of the bad boy Pistons, they shouldn't have beat Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, but they did because they were a team and they overcame two of the greatest players in NBA history to do it. That's just something to think about. And NBA free agency will continue to progress. If things happen, if Kawhi Leonard signs, we'll be all over it here and to the point. But the news of the day, Demar DeRozan is joining the Chicago Bulls as the Bulls are starting to make some major moves, starting to put themselves in a position where they want to be a playoff team next year. And DeRozan isn't exactly my favorite player, but he's a good complementary piece to Zach LaVine, and hopefully that team can make some strides next season. To wrap up the podcast today, I mentioned the Indianapolis Colts yesterday, where their quarterback, Carson Wentz, is having foot surgery. He's going to be out 5 to 12 weeks. It's uncertain when he'll return. They have quarterbacks on the roster, Jacob Eason, Brett Hundley, Sam Ehlinger, all who have, Brett Hundley's thrown a few passes in the NFL, but he was Aaron Rodgers' backup, Russell Wilson's backup, and has just bounced around and not been a factor. Ehlinger's a rookie out of Texas, 5th-round pick. I'd be surprised if he plays many games in the NFL. Then you have Jacob Eason, who knows, but again, he's a rookie, never gotten a snap. So the general thought is, well, the Colts should go get a veteran. Is that Marcus Mariota? Could they bring in Nick Foles, who's the 3rd-string quarterback in Chicago behind Andy Dalton and Justin Fields? Now, that would be catastrophic, I think, because Carson Wentz would just be getting flashbacks of Philadelphia, where he was injured and he gets replaced by Nick Foles and the team goes on a run. And there's also the thought of maybe you go get Gardner Minshew. But Minshew is the backup to Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, and that's it in division, so I don't think they'd want to trade Minshew inside a division and have to deal with him potentially down the road. So they're in a rock and a hard place there. And just a day later, you think, okay, we have no quarterback. That's tough. We don't have him for the whole preseason. He's not going to get reps with Michael Pittman, with T.Y. Hilton, with our receiving core, learning the cadence with Jonathan Taylor, the running back. Today it's announced that all-pro guard, formerly of Notre Dame, I think the best guard in the NFL, this guy's going to the Hall of Fame, Quentin Nelson, has basically the same injury that Carson Wentz has. And he is going to be out 5 to 12 weeks with foot surgery. So not only do they not have a quarterback, but they lose their all-pro guard. And this is going to make no sense, but I think the loss of Quentin Nelson is a bigger loss than Carson Wentz. And my reasoning for saying that is, okay, you don't have Carson Wentz, but you do still have one of the best offensive lines in football with Ryan Kelly, with Quentin Nelson. You just got a stud offensive line. And okay, you can't throw the ball down the field. You got to change your playbook a bit if Eason's at quarterback or whomever. But you still have Jonathan Taylor. You still have Nakeem Hines, where you can use that offensive line to not only protect the quarterback, but improve your run game. Quentin Nelson is known for being a great run blocker, and Jonathan Taylor can run for over 100 yards a game, get him 25 to 30 carries, and maybe you stay in some ball games. You stay competitive. But with Nelson out, now you don't have a quarterback. You don't have your right guard, and you're basically saying, we don't have confidence we can run the ball. We don't have confidence that we can throw the ball. We're up Schitt's Creek. And the Colts, this could be a worse start to training camp. Wentz is in his first year. He's already coming off a season where he lost all his confidence. Now you don't have a quarterback. It's just a nightmare in Indianapolis. And to start their season, I believe they play Tennessee, Pittsburgh, Miami. Like, they got a tough schedule to start. It's not just going to be a walkthrough for them. It wouldn't be anyway, because I think the NFL is going to be tough this year. I'm going to pull up their schedule here. just on the fly, because I think it's interesting to talk about who they'll play likely now with no Quentin Nelson, no Carson Wentz. So they start with the Seahawks at home. It's a tough one. Even with Carson Wentz, that's no guaranteed win. Then they got the Rams. Okay. L. Then they go to Tennessee. Okay. No. Yeah. Then they go to Miami. Again, Miami's not a given team, but they're no slouch either. Then they go to Baltimore. Their first gimme of the year is hosting the Texans on October 17th. There's no guarantee that either guy's back yet. They'll beat the Texans with, me at quarterback. But again, then they got the 49ers, Titans. Like, they got a tough schedule. They got the Bills on the schedule. They got the Bucs, the Pats, Cardinals. Like, it's not an easy schedule this year for the Indianapolis Colts. And it's tough sledding, but they got to figure this out. Sooner rather than later, if they're going to add a veteran, they need to do it, because you want to have a guy that has reps with the team. He can play some preseason snaps. Nick Foles is not the option for me. Nick Foles had a great run with Philly. He won a Super Bowl, but that was a long time ago. He's third string for a reason in Chicago, because he can't play anymore. Mitchell Trubisky beat him out for the position last year. Mitchell Trubisky is now a backup in Buffalo. So it tells you something that a backup quarterback was better than him last season. So, like I said yesterday, Mariota, if you can lure him out, but the price tag may be too big. But with the loss of Quentin Nelson, I think it changes things, because if you can't run the ball and you don't have a quarterback, you don't have an offense. And they need to find ways to diversify, to be creative. And I think they need to learn quickly, can Jacob Eason play? Can Sam Ehlinger play? And if not, we need to go out there and do something about it. We need to sign somebody that we at least trust a tiny bit to take snaps and be an efficient enough quarterback to give us a chance to win some of these games against really, really tough opponents. So, and the Colts are in tough. The NFL is in full swing. We got training camp going. I mentioned the Hall of Fame games on Thursday. And between the Cowboys and Steelers, CFL going. I know Tuesdays we usually do, me and Seamus are usually doing Breaking Bad coverage. He's on vacation this week, hanging out with family today. However, we will be live tomorrow around this time to talk about episodes 7 and 8 of season 3 of Breaking Bad. So we are doing that this week. Shane will be joining me tomorrow. So get ready for that. But lots to come this week. We got the Olympics winding down because it's starting up. We got UFC 266, maybe 265, 266 on the weekend. But I'll preview that throughout the week as well, as I'm really excited to see what Derek Lewis, and Cyril Gain can produce Saturday night in Houston in front of a jam-packed crowd. So as always, guys, appreciate the support. Hope you guys enjoyed it today. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and have a great day and take care.